Welcome back to the Freedom Kickstarter podcast. So today I have a great guest with me. I've got Keith Commins. So as always, I will let the guests introduce themselves. So yeah, Keith, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
My name's Keith Commins. I'm from Dublin, and I suppose I consider myself to be a sales funnel builder. So defining what a sales funnel builder is always, or a sales funnel designer is always kind of a bit tricky. Because when you say this to a layperson, they're like, what the hell is that? Well, I would consider it to be someone who has a foot in both direct response marketing and web design, and just design in general. So you're someone who's capable, or someone who's comfortable of writing a piece of copy that's reasonably well written, that probably converts. So you understand direct response copy at a fundamental level, what it's trying to do, what it's trying to achieve, and you have a solid enough tech background so you can put together a fairly nice website. So you're someone who's comfortable with both, basically. So that's really it, and that's what I try to do.
Got it. And I think that we must have connected, probably about 5-6 years ago?
7 years ago.
7 years ago.
2018.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a long time, actually.
Done your research. And I think that's the reason why I reached out to you, is because I'd used web design and stuff in the past, but they didn't really get direct response. But I know that you'd done a lot of that at the time, and that's why kind of we connected, and what you produced was just exactly what I needed, basically. So what was like I hesitate to use the cliched phrase, what was the journey for you getting into doing what you do?
Man, it was kind of a long journey, and it took many twists and turns. I think that probably the best place to start is right back when I was a kid, all right? So I've always been into tech in some form or other since I was like 4 or 5. It's my dad brought home an Amstrad 464, right? So I've always been into tech. I've always been into, back when I got that, I was making my own games. I used to hack protection systems. I used to do things like, back then, all games loaded on tape, on cassette, which is really old school. Like, this is even before like floppy disks. So I would load them on. I would get the tape version, and the reason we would do that was it was a fraction of the price of a floppy disk version, and we'd break the protection system and then put it onto disk. I would hack games, so to give myself infinite lives, I would make my own games. I would strip computers down to the bare components, put them back together again, add new stuff, take out things. So I always had that tinkerer mindset. I used to tinker around with bikes and skateboards and all that kind of stuff. So that's where all that kind of began. So it was I suppose I was destined to do something in computers and tech. I went to college, did maths and physics. Didn't do computers, actually. And then basically went to work in systems, building networks. And so I worked as a system admin, then found myself working in a place called Wimbledon Lane. And Wimbledon Lane is a place that's kind of, has some international repute, basically. It was where U2 recorded all their albums, so that was my last proper job. I was the IT manager there, basically. And how I suppose I've always kind of I always kind of harbored a desire to do my own thing, but I didn't know quite what, right? So I kind of did some entrepreneurial-ish stuff. When I was in school, I used to find call cards and sell them to the other lads at school. During the 2000s, I used to run my own gigs. I used to put on techno gigs. I was put on raves, stuff like that. So I always kind of had that kind of interest, I suppose. And I always would be like, yeah, it would be nice to do something business-wise, but I never really got around to doing it. So I found myself working corporate jobs, which was great. I was living a very kind of just a normal life, had a mortgage, had a girlfriend that's probably going to get married. But in 2008, everything changed. So in 2008, I went through 3 jobs. I lost 2 jobs. I got redundant twice in the space of a few months. And the third job, my last proper job, the Wimbledon Lane that I just mentioned, one day we all get called into the office and we're told that the company didn't have as much money as we were hoping to have. And everyone was getting their pay cut. And the bonus I had been promised didn't materialize. So this kind of left me very, very crestfallen. It left me kind of like, it left me feeling that I didn't have any control. Right? It felt like I was a victim. It felt like I was being, moved from pillar to post. I was in a, pinball machine being knocked around. And I just felt that I needed to get control somehow, right? So the next year was in 2009, right? So the start of 2009. And I remember the specific day it happened, right? It was 2009. The day that everyone refers to as Blue Monday, like the most depressing day of the year. I think it's the third Monday.
Third Monday in January.
Yeah. So I was on the train home, right? And it was just one of those miserable, dirty January days where it's just cold, it's rainy, it's dark, and I'm on the train and I'm thinking to myself, right, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to do something. I don't know what it is, but I'll figure it out, but I have to do my own thing, right? So that was really when it started. I was like, I have to work for myself in some capacity, right? Just to take control of my life. My motivation was not necessarily to make a shit ton of money, like to be like Scrooge McDuck and a swim pool full of money, surrounded by like bikini clad girls and that kind of stuff. It was just to have control of my life and to dictate the terms of how I lived, how I did business, how I worked, everything. So that's when it kind of started, and it took maybe another few years of dreaming, just like what will I do? Before eventually I pulled the trigger. I think it was late 2011, and I decided I was going to be a web designer. And I wasn't a particularly good web designer, but I knew how to code because I'd been making, websites for people just either for free or I'd do it for a few quid for many years since the 90s. So I knew how to do web design, but I wasn't necessarily a good web designer. That wasn't my thing. I was a network engineer. So that was really it. I just decided, right, I'm going out my own. I had no savings. I had my last month's wages. I had a credit card. I think I had 2 credit cards, actually. And that was it. I just said, hey, I'm going to do this. And that was it. And I jumped into the great unknown in 2012. And it didn't go to plan. The first year was a complete disaster. I thought naively, I'm going to get clients very easily. Because people will just work with me because I'm a good web designer. Like, people will just like me, and people will just be, calling me up, and it'll be easy. Of course, that's not how it was. So that started the process of going down the direct response route, finding out about direct response, number one, and learning the basics of direct response, learning how to write copy. Not necessarily becoming a copywriter, but I was very familiar with how to write copy. I used to do things like, I just devoured any piece of direct response literature, any book I could find from Dan Kennedy, all the greats, the classics like the likes of Claude Hopkins, the John Caples, all these people. I just would devour everything from them and just drink it up. And yeah, that's how I got involved in that, but it was a necessity more than anything else. But it wasn't like that at the very start. It took maybe about a year before I found anything to do direct response. So the first year was awful because I didn't have a clue what I was doing marketing-wise, so I made a hell of a lot of mistakes, and it was a very depressing, miserable year.
Well, I think without being sort of too doom and gloom about it, that's sometimes nice for people to hear, because I think people often think, oh, it's just going to be sunshine and roses from day one.
Yes, absolutely.
But as you say, it's most people in business who've done well have gone through that.
Yeah.
So then I think sort of the reason why I reached out to you initially was because a friend of mine, I was looking for some work to be done, and mentioned you and mentioned some of the people that you'd done work with in the direct response space. And
Alexander Mullen.
Yes, it was. Yeah. And I won't mention clients, and if you've got NDAs, you're welcome to, but I won't say that. But just the names that he told me you'd worked with, I was like, okay, I need to hire this guy. And it was like, you're the web design guy who also knows direct response.
Yeah.
It made it really obvious to hire you. I don't think I don't think we had a massive long chat beforehand. I don't think there was probably a lot of selling for you to do. It was just that reputation plus the referral. So did you get into doing the direct response stuff because you had to learn it for your own business then? Is that kind of how that came about?
Well, I think I'll start with some of the stuff I was doing first before I even found direct response, right? So, like I said, I naively thought that I would just get clients and people would come to me. Like, I genuinely thought that. And of course, that's not how it worked out. That's not how the real world is, right? So, when I found out that, business wasn't kind of breaking my door down to come work with me, I was like, okay, well, I have to do something. I have to try something. So, I tried everything from cold calling. That was a complete disaster. I remember talking to, I I remember talking to some guy one day, and he was making threats with me. He thought I was like he thought I was some sort of scammer. He sounded like, I remember he was this guy, right? He sounded like he smoked like 80 cigars a day. He sounded like this guy Ronnie Drew, right? If anyone's Irish, they'll know who he is. He has a voice like a tractor, and I was on he wouldn't let me get off the phone, right? He just kept going on about how, you're an internet scammer, and some internet scammer had taken money off his wife. So I was meeting all these oddballs while trying to sell my business. So what I had done was I compiled a short list of a spreadsheet of businesses in Dublin that I reckon could either do with a new website, or they could do with a website, or some sort of improved website. So I just cold called them all, and I got the metaphorical door slammed in my face. I don't think I got anywhere with any of them. And like I said, some of them were nasty to me. One guy was like threatening to call the police. Like he reckoned I had scammed his wife. So that didn't go too well. I tried doing doorstepping, literally showing up to businesses, doing the DAS doorstep challenge, showing up instead of showing up with DAS. I showed up with my web design business, and I almost got the police called me doing that as well. I tried BNI. I don't know if you've ever heard of BNI.
I went to 2 BNI meetings, yeah. Actually, weirdly, I got a client who stayed with me for about 7 years from a BNI meeting, but I think that's probably the best return on investment anyone who's gone to BNI has ever got, probably.
BNI is very strange.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
BNI is like a cult, right?
Yep, 100%.
So what I found strange about BNI, they knew I existed as a web designer within a very, very short period of time. They found me. I think I'd only registered my business a few months, right? And they were kind of, and they're reaching out to me. Hey, you should come along to our meetup. And it just sounded so good. They were like, you'll have as much business as you want. Oh, we're this networking organization. You can have as much business as you want. And it's just like, wow, that sounds amazing. Mm. So I'm like, yeah, what I got to lose? So you get there, right? And I remember it was like, it reminded me of the Freemasons or something like that. It reminded me of something of that ilk, I half expected, like, at some stage it was going to be an initiation ceremony, like eyes wide shut. Everyone's going to come out in robes, and I'm like, to join it, I'm going to have to, kill a live pig or something, like something crazy. And it was just very, very creepy. There was everyone there was kind of programmed. They had this, I don't know, the vibe was just very strange. It was off with it. But to anyone who doesn't know what BNI is all about, basically it's in every chapter there is everyone is there's every niche or industry. There's one person from every niche or industry, right? So there's an accountant, there's a lawyer, there's a dentist, blah blah blah. There's a web designer, and right. And the whole idea is you're supposed to refer business to each other. You're supposed to every week you're supposed to come with a lead for someone else, and I think it cost, back then it was like 700, 800 euros or something like that. And to my mind, this was like, well, I'm in business to do what I'm supposed to be doing, like web design, whatever it is. I'm not here to get leads for anyone else. If I was going to get leads for everyone else, I'd do it as a business. Yeah. Like, why would I get some accountants, like, spend time out of my week, trying to look for leads? So to me, that was just like, it didn't make sense. Maybe it works for some people, but it's to me, this seemed like a crazy idea. So what else was I doing? They were the big three. Just kind of lots of cold calling. Another thing that I remember, right, when I started our local enterprise group where I lived in Dublin, they used to put on workshops, right? And I remember I went along to one workshop, and it was a social media workshop, right? And just the advice that I was getting from everyone was just so generic, and for social media, they were basically saying, just put yourself out there. Like, I was getting nothing kind of solid and useful and specific from everyone. I remember I did this particular workshop. They were like, just post on social media. Put yourself out there. Put yourself out there like a lanky centre forward like Peter Crouch. Just make yourself visible. But no actual kind of solid tactics or systems that would reliably attract, leads who are interested in what you do. There was nobody talking about any of this. And yeah, it was very, very disheartening. I remember I must have went through thousands of business cards. I would go along to business mixers, different kind of networking meetups. And I was genuinely very depressed. I was like, man, this is not working. I was a year into it almost. And I got nothing. I hadn't paid my mortgage in months. I was really broke. I was making no money. Very, very depressed and very disheartened by everything. And then one day, I'm on Facebook, and I'm doom scrolling along Facebook, and I see this ad, okay? And it stopped me dead in my tracks for a few reasons, right? Number one, it was the image of the person, right, who had made the ad, right? The gentleman in question, right, he looked unusual. So the guy he looked like the sort of guy you would see walking down the street with two pit bulls on either side and a can of Stella and a wife beater, and he'd been down the pub all day, he's going home to beat his wife up. He looked like one of these kind of guys. He was covered in tattoos, he had two big earrings, shaved head, and he looked really mean, he looked scary. So I see this, what appeared to be a tug, just staring back at me, and he had this kind of toothy grin. I think one of his teeth is missing. And I was just like, who is it? It just stopped me dead in my tracks. This weird, strange looking guy, right? But it was the pattern into of seeing this particular gentleman and his message, right? So his message, the headline for what he was selling, ultimately what he does, was insanely effective, right? So he identified in the headline, all good headlines will do two things. They'll identify who it's for, and they will identify the value proposition, what if you use this particular product or service, what you should get or what they would like you to get, right? So it was basically what he said was, attention freelancers, coaches, consultants, or something to that effect, which I was, right? So it called out who should be reading this message. Are you tired of doing lots of cold calling? He basically articulated exactly everything I'd been doing. In fact, I think he even mentioned BNI. So I saw that the combination of seeing this peculiar individual, gentleman, with a bald head, who looked like he should have been, walking down the street with two pit bulls, about to cause some, like... He looked strange. So the combination of seeing this guy and the insanely good copy, which identified my particular set of problems at that time, I was like, I have to read more about this guy. So I clicked on his ad. I was brought to a landing page, sales page, long form sales page, where he just went into greater detail about what he did, how he helped people. He started with basically kind of detailing my particular situation, why it wasn't working, why it would never work, what I needed to do. Instead, you need to do X, Y, Z. You need to listen to me for this particular reason. I'd never seen anything like this before, ever, right? The marketing I had been used to up at that particular time had been completely different. It had just been very nondescript. It had been very vague. It had not really made any attempt to kind of address someone's particular issues, someone's particular pain points. This was different. This really spoke to me personally about my situation. And not just that, but the message was spot on. But the one thing I liked that really hooked me in from the very outset, John, was there was loads of F-bombs. He was swearing. He says at the very start, he was just like, I'm not politically correct. I was like, who is this guy? He just doesn't care. This is like nothing I've ever seen before. Because I don't know about you, but up to that point, I would have thought that a marketing consultant, copywriter, whatever, would have looked and behaved a certain way. You know, maybe he was like, you know, a dude in a suit with like slick back hair, something like American Psycho, that kind of thing, you know. But this guy was different. And yeah, he hooked me into his world. I signed up to his, he had kind of a membership community. And through him, I learned, I might as well tell you who he is. His name is John McCulloch, aka the Eagle Ball Genius. And through him, I learned everything about direct response. He was my first mentor. And he taught me about how to write copy, how copy should be structured, what you're trying to do. You're trying to elicit a response from your audience, from your target market. And yeah, that's where it all started. That's where all my marketing attempts went from basically completely hopeless to actually seeing some traction.
And so how did you start then signing clients who also wanted that? Because I'm assuming most web designers will do things like for beauty salons and hairdressers and accountants. So how did you get into actually doing it for people who had, you know, much more of an idea about marketing, basically?
Well, that didn't start initially. So what I started, the very first thing I tried actually, so I have a prop here. How it started really was I went back to what I was doing with cold calling, right? And the very first thing I did in terms of kind of direct mail, right? I said, instead of cold calling them, right, I'm going to send them a postcard campaign, right?
Might be able to pick up with the camera.
So here it is.
Try that. Hopefully zoom in.
So instead of kind of cold calling, John was like, no, that's not going to work, right? You need to send them something of value. You need to kind of get them to come to you. And a good way to do it is try this postcard campaign. So what I did was I sent them out this. It was a three step, I think, postcard campaign. And instead of just ringing them up and going, "Hey, I'm a web designer, work with me," I was like, "No, I want to get them onto my list, get them to download something of value, and build a relationship with these people via email over a period of time into my funnel." And it was that's how it started. That was my first attempt at kind of list building. And I think I must have sent out about 300-400, I'm not really sure, and I got 10 opt-ins. And out of that I got my first 3 clients. So it worked, and I was like, wow, you mean to tell me this there's actually something to this? So yeah, I sent them to, my whole shtick really was, I positioned myself as the good guy, right? I basically kind of had I basically took the position that every other web designer out there is ripping you off, and I'm the good guy, and I won't do that. And if you want to find out what how dirty and mercenary and how just underhand web designers are in general, you need to read my report. So what I said to them was, attention business owners, the web design industry's dirty little secret that's robbing your business blind of profits. And effectively what I said in the report was that web designers do not understand marketing. And you want to build your website such that you get leads, or else what's the point of it? Web designers are usually building a website that doesn't do very much. It's just this blob of nothingness that just that's not really optimized to kind of get any kind of response. Ultimately it's pointless. It's a waste of time, and they're ripping you off. And you need to work with me, because that's not what I do. I will build it so that it actually does something, that it gets you leads, it gets you clients, it gets you phone calls, whatever your most wanted response is. And I got some opt-ins, and from them I got some clients, and that's how it all started.
Like it, amazing. Yeah. And then what was sort of the next steps to becoming more known as like the design guy for copywriters, direct response people? What was that process?
So I was working with John, and once I got into that kind of into that arena, into that sphere, I worked with a few people from John's group. Then John was always talking about this guy Ben Settle, and how he was very, very different to him in some ways, but he was very, very similar. He had a similar kind of libertarian ethos mindset. and he was constantly kind of bigging him up. He was saying, hey, you should check this guy, opt into his list, maybe even sign up to his newsletter. So I checked him out, and I really liked what Ben was talking about. He seemed to be, again, I like people who have kind of a libertarian outlook on life, who have a natural distrust of authority and the government. And the funny thing about what Ben and John as well, their emails had very little to do, right? Their daily emails or their regular emails had very, very little to do with actual they didn't necessarily talk about business. They would talk about stuff that's personal to them, how they saw the world, things that they believe in terms of whether it's politics, popular culture, you name it. And Ben was very like that. He would, he would just talk about things that he was interested in. He would talk about politics quite a lot. He would talk about his beliefs, and then he would tie it into his product. The way he did it was it was genius. He would never talk about sometimes he did, but he wouldn't necessarily start an email with his main product email players. He'd talk about something completely unrelated, and he would somehow bring it back to that. So yeah, I really like Ben, his style, his attitude, the things he was talking about. I signed up to his list first, and then I signed up to email players. Still a subscriber to the day. And Ben back then used to do critiques. I don't think he does them anymore. I don't think he's done them for a while. And he would do critiques of your emails. So he did a critique in one of mine. And from that, he just basically said, hey, you're a web designer. Do you want to do my website? And that was it. And I've worked with him since then. So that was 10, 11 years ago. And from then, like, he has relentlessly pimped me up.
Well, I guess sometimes it's putting yourself in the right places and aligning with the right people.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like I say, it's if you can align with an authority and do a good job for them, that's like, that's worth 10 years of experience in itself.
100%.
Sometimes. So, no, I love that approach. I think that's why I'm big on joining masterminds as well, because it's like, you maybe getting business directly from them is not the initial aim, but actually it's it's something that can definitely come from it as well. Like I know I've hired people who've done my courses before, because I'm like, well, I already know you a bit. I already know we've got similar principles, values, ethos, that kind of thing. So if I know you're also good at what you do, why would I not?
Exactly.
hire
Yeah.
you, really?
It's why else would you look to someone else?
Yeah.
If you have someone in your universe like that's capable of doing a job, like why would you bother going outside that? Doesn't make any sense. So that's how it started, and from there, I just naturally. It took maybe a few years before I started to brand myself as a sales funnel designer, but that's ultimately how it started, where I was doing websites that had direct response flavor, that were built to respond, that were built to elicit a response, some sort of most wanted response. And from there, I just started really getting geeky into kind of how can I design to eke out the most amount of response from a particular sales page, landing page, opt-in page. And that's what I really do today, is I just geek out on conversion orientated design. How do you do it? How do you set up a landing page so that it maximizes the chances of conversion? A sales page, an opt-in page, different components of a sales funnel, whatever it might be. So,
like it.
Yeah.
Definitely come back to the business stuff, but I did want to talk about the libertarian aspect you mentioned. I know, like, personal sovereignty is a big thing for you. So
absolutely.
Give us what's the 30,000-foot view? This may be a very vague question, but your kind of view on that. What's your mantra on libertarianism?
Well, libertarianism for me is what I suppose there's different definitions of it, but what I like to think of it is the government stays out of people's lives as much as possible, unless it's absolutely necessary. Mm-hmm. I think it's like you're allowed to do whatever the hell you want. You're allowed to You're allowed to swing your fist as much as you want, provided you don't make contact with someone else's face, basically. So you're allowed to do whatever you want, provided you're not harming other people, right? And the government shouldn't really be kind of in people's business unless someone else's rights are being violated. You're stealing from someone else, you're harming them, you're committing violence. So that's how I look at it, but that's not how things are at the moment. Governments are getting far too much power. They're far too much say in how people live. They're policing people's speech, and it's gone to overdrive since that bug that went around a few years ago started. Before that, it wasn't really too bad, but something, without getting too conspiratorial about it, since then something kind of sinister has happened all around the world. Governments seem to be getting, since then, I think a lot of them have gotten drunk in power. And it's like COVID finished and we're like, okay, well, what rights can we take from people next? Well, let's, stop people from saying certain things that might offend people. I don't know we could go down lots of different rabbit holes as to why that might be happening. But in essence, libertarianism, really, it's how I like to think of it, is the government stays out of people's lives unless it's absolutely necessary. Unless someone's rights are being violated, someone, like I said, are they committing violence against someone? Are they stealing from someone? Blah blah blah. So that's how I look at it. Personal sovereignty to me is huge, because I think what motivates me in business and in life in general isn't the desire to make a shitload of money, although that's maybe nice, but that's not what motivates me. What motivates me is to live a life of relative freedom, where I'm not beholden to a particular government's whims. I'm not beholden to the whims of a crazy employer. I'm not dealing with people on a daily basis that I don't want to deal with. One of the reasons I left my last job, right? It was one of the main reasons I left employment in general was, and this went for pretty much every job I ever had, there was always a few people I did not want to deal with. And I think this is something you can relate to if you've ever had any sort of corporate job, right? There's always a certain couple of people that you're kind of thinking to yourself, why am I talking to you? Why am I interacting with you? Why am I, sharing oxygen with you? I don't want to. You're not someone I would if it wasn't for the fact that we're both working in this particular company, I wouldn't be talking to you in a fit. I remember there's one particular guy, and I think it was the day I kind of decided I had enough, and he, in my last job, right, and he would ring me up, right, or he would actually come into my office. He would sit at my desk right in front of me, and I'm like, that's a bit rude. Just sitting on my desk, like. So he would come in and he would be eating a lot of the time. He would be eating a sandwich. He'd be eating like a banana or like some piece of fruit, or he'd call me up like eating his lunch, and I remember one time he rang me up and he was eating his lunch, and he took like a minute to get to the point as to what he wanted. I'm like, why am I talking to you? Like you have. And it was the motivation to get away from people like that. And sovereignty for me is I don't talk or deal with anyone I do not want to deal with. Every person that enters my life, whether it's clients, whether it's friends, whether it's any other type of person, right? They're there because I want them there, right? I've invited them in. I've let the door open. I say, hey, you can come on in, and I want you to be part of my life, right? But back when I was an employee, that was not the case. There was all sorts of people you had to deal with, because if you didn't, you would be in trouble, right? So sovereignty really is, on a personal level, it's not dealing with situations or people you do not want to have to deal with. And that to me is priceless. It is so good. And it's not, the money is, okay, the money's great, fantastic. But that to me is worth far more than any amount of money. Just the ability to kind of wake up and you do the work that you like, that is meaningful to you, that you can do well, you're good at, and you're working with people and you're dealing with people, right, that you like dealing with. And it's just easy. It's just like nice. It's just a nice feeling. And on a more macro level, you're not dealing with problems from your government or your country or wherever you happen to be living or spending time. So yeah, it's just the elimination. So sovereignty in general is just elimination of problems that you do not want to have to deal with, whether it's personal on a personal level in business, or on a more macro level in the place that you happen to be from, or where you were living. That's how I term it. That's how I think about it, and that's how I kind of ended up in digital nomadism, I suppose.
Yeah, and I definitely think we're very much on the same page about
Yeah.
that. Certainly, the personal thing, I have to be. That's one I sometimes do fall back into the trap of working with people I don't want to work with.
Yeah.
And it's easily done. I think you sort of tell yourself it'll be fine working with this person. Oh, it's not a red flag, it's an amber flag, or that kind of thing. And normally it ends up worse than you think it was going to be in the first place. So I think that's a big one. But yeah, on the sort of the more macro level, I think, as you said, I've been very open about my views around lockdowns and that kind of thing. And I think it woke a lot of people up. But at the same time, I saw it as, and I heard this phrase, I think it was Michael Malice who said this. He said something about it's the petty tyranny of low status people. And I was like, low status sounds a bit harsh, but what he meant was, let's say you work in, and I love all the baristas in my local coffee shop, there's nothing against them, but let's say you work in a coffee shop and day to day you don't really have any say so, any power or control. All of a sudden you were told it's perfectly okay to say to a customer, oh, you can't stand there, move a foot to the side please. Or in I think it was one of the coffee shop chains, you couldn't hand cash to the barista, you had to put it on a saucer between the two of you. And he framed it, Michael Malice, as a lot of people want to keep control of that. And that's why I think 100%. A lot of stuff hasn't switched back with it. It's the government's realising they can do that stuff. Like Neil Ferguson said, we didn't think we'd get away with it.
Yeah, 100%. And you're dead right about these like petty tyrants, right? There's so many people in life that live that life of quiet desperation. That Henry Thoreau quote, I always love that. And they exist all over the place. They have little purpose. They have, they're in positions. There, lots of people who are bureaucrats would tick that box, right? They don't really have a purpose, right? So when you have a situation that comes along that gives these people power, all of a sudden they're relevant for the first time in their lives. They're like, well, like I can exercise power over that person. I can push them around. I can tell them what to do. I spent the entirety of COVID, the bad parts, so from the start of 2020 to late 2021, 2022, I was in Spain, right? And Spain was okay in many ways, but the bad thing about Spain for COVID was that they required you to wear a mask outside while out in the street. I don't know what it was like in the UK. I don't think you just had to do that.
No, only indoors, and obviously you could take it off when you stood up in a restaurant to go to the toilet, because any virus particles stay below about 4 foot. So it was obviously only dangerous when you're sat
virus. It knows when you're kind of.
It's quite heightist, really, isn't it? Yeah,
it's totally, man. But yeah, like Spain, we had to wear a mask outside, and it was enforced. It wasn't just one of those rules they kind of had there, but everyone ignored. They actually enforced it, and I got dos multas, 2 fines. I spent 2020 in Mallorca, and the first kind of 2 months, right, of COVID, we couldn't leave the house at all, right, except to go to the supermarket. And I remember, like, the first time I got in trouble with fines, almost with fines. The first time, right, I was stopped by 2 policia. I was stopped by 2 policemen, and basically what they were checking, you weren't allowed to go out for any. You were supposed to only go out to go to the supermarket, right? And they were checking whether you actually were going out to go to the supermarket. So I came back from the supermarket. I was coming with a big rucksack full of food, and the 2 cops stopped me. This is in Palma, Mallorca, in the center of Palma. And they were stopping me, and they said, like, we need to see your ticket. And I'm like, my receipt. And I'm like, oh, I don't know about you, but I never take the receipt when I'm in the supermarket. I always just throw it away because I generally don't need it. I generally don't return food. So he insisted. I knew it was in my bag somewhere. I knew I'd just thrown it in, right? And he insisted there out in the street that I take out all my stuff. He was like, I'm not letting you go without it. You have to produce your receipt. He insisted on having me there take out all my bits and pieces, all my bits of food. And then in the end, I pulled it out like, a ticket from Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. There you go, right? And the same thing happened again, right? So it was the original, about a week later, it was the police, one of the policemen who had stopped me that time, he was there again, but he was in the background, right? And he saw that he recognized me and I recognized him. And they were doing the same thing again. And I'm like, why? This is completely pointless. So get people like that the opportunity to exercise and wield power that maybe they might have had before. I got another fine for walking because I had my mask right down around my throat, around my neck. I was going to the beach. This is in July 2020, and I thought there was no one around. I was walking down this very, lonely country road. I was going to the beach. Mallorca, one of the things that was great about it was that there was no one there. The island was empty. There was no tourists. So from that sense, it was really cool. We were able to go wherever the hell we wanted. You could rent a car for €1. Everything was empty. It was amazing from that standpoint. So there was no. It's usually destroyed by tourists, but that summer was completely empty. So I went to spend a day in a place called Cala Dea, right? One of the really cool calas. It's just amazing, kind of picture postcard, kind of turquoise blue. I was going to just chill out there for the day. And I'm walking along, and I have my mask in around my neck. And as luck would have it, two cops come out of nowhere. And they see this, and they give me a fine. They're like, you're supposed to wear your mask. Say it to me in Spanish. They're like, you need to wear your mask. And I'm like, bro, come on, like, there's no one here. Like, it's if I was in a crowd, if I was, in a crowded street, even then it would be stupid. But like, you could sort of understand it then. But no, they just had to exercise and wield that power because. This wasn't about keeping anyone safe. This was about them being petty tyrants. So yeah, man, it gives an opportunity to so many otherwise unremarkable individuals an opportunity to wield power that they otherwise wouldn't have had, right? And I think that's a reason why a lot of these same people are so keen to kind of keep this this whole situation going in other ways.
Well, I remember seeing a study that came out, or a poll rather. I think it was in 2023. It was certainly kind of at least 2 years after everything had blown over for the most part. And it was something about how do you feel about nightclubs being open. And something like 20% of people polled said they should still be closed because there's a danger of transmitting a virus. And you're like...
In 2023?
Yeah. And you're like,
what?
That's 20% of people who basically just don't want other people having fun. And I think that's, again, relates back to the whole thing of it's like it's probably quite a British thing, but it's almost like the tall poppy syndrome. Like, I don't want you having autonomy and fun. Yeah. So I'm going to, my view is that you shouldn't be able to have fun because I'm not having fun. I think, unfortunately, that ramped up in that period and has not entirely ramped down since.
Yeah, there's always a certain percentage of people who are just miserable bastards. Like that's they just don't have anything going on in life. They've always existed, and unfortunately, a lot of them tended to be in positions of relative power. And they, like, I saw one guy. There's one person I know, and he loved being home. I remember him he was upset, right, that in Ireland, that Ireland was going to go back in 2022 to some semblance of normality, and he was bemoaning this. He was like, oh, I was having such a good time at home. I could do X, Y, Z. I didn't have to go to the office, blah, blah. And, I just want to keep this going forever, and I was happy, not everything was closed. And he really got off on the fact that everyone else, that he was having his perfect life, which was just miserable, stuck at home. And he wanted to keep everyone kind of doing or living the same way, like. And he was really upset about it, So there is and there always has been a certain percentage of people who are just generally miserable bastards. They're just people who can't stand to see other people having any sort of fun or thriving in any way. They don't want the best for other people. Yeah. They've always existed.
Just they got more leeway and more control in that period.
Exactly.
And trying to cling on to it.
There's actually in Ireland, right, we had I'll give you a great example of this, right? There was our chief medical, or CMO, it's our equivalent to chief, what was his name? Chris Whitty.
Yes, yeah.
So he's a guy called Tony Holden, right? And in 2021, it was coming into the summer, right? So this is May 2021, right? And I remember he went on a Twitter rampage because people were outside, and it was a really warm day I think it was a bank holiday weekend in May 2021, and people were just out and about in the streets of Dublin. They were in parks, blah, blah, blah. They were just kind of drinking wine, drinking cans of beer, all this kind of stuff, out enjoying the weather. And he was driving around like, parents looking for his underage kid, who'd been out misbehaving. And he was driving around and he was live tweeting, and he was kind of like, oh, I see a person who's like drinking wine with their friends in a picnic in blah, 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 XYZ place. And he was going around driving and just I'm like, you miserable bastards. Have you anything, what, do you have anything better to do?
Yeah.
Just like this is the absolute Dickensian kind of bah humbug mentality of some of these people to, that's all it is for a lot of these people, I think.
Well, it's the curtain twitchers and the whole,
curtain twitcher, yeah.
I saw Sharon from number 43 out for a second walk of the day.
Yeah.
I was out on my second walk, but my second walk of the day was important.
Yeah, I'm a good person.
Which is just, it was all bonkers. I think we are moving back to normality to a degree, but I think there'll be some lingering effects of it, unfortunately. But I suppose with the nomadism, was it a blessing and a curse during that time, or did you find you could move around to places that were generally a bit more sane?
Well, I spent the entire thing in Spain. I did move around in Spain. I spent 2020 in Mallorca. Then I went to the Canaries. I went to Las Palmas. Spent the first half of 2021 in Las Palmas. Then I went down to the south. I went to Maspalomas. And then I went to Barcelona, so I was in Spain the entire time, and it was okay. It was genuinely a lot better from what I could see, because everywhere was open.
Yep.
They didn't really close anywhere. The bars, what would happen was they would close certain places, like they were closing gyms quite a lot. And again, the rules were completely bonkers. Like they closed gyms, but then they would I remember when I was in Las Palmas, right? So I was living right beside the Paseo, the beach. They would close off playgrounds, and there was an outdoor gym, and that was taped over and blocked off. And right beside it, there was a bar, literally that was holding about 100 people and outside drinking. But yet they saw fit to close the playground and the outdoor gym. Like, someone make that make sense. That doesn't, that's completely stupid. So from that point of view, the bars were usually open. I think they might have closed once or twice, but generally things like that were open. Restaurants, there was still stupid rules. You had to wear the mask if you're inside. You had to wear the mask everywhere, except when you were drinking, you could take it off. You had to wear a mask inside in the gyms when they were open, which was enforced. The cops would regularly show up. Working out with a mask is not fun. Not only is it's not just uncomfortable, but it's actually dangerous. I almost fainted a few times. If you're doing a big heavy deadlift and you can't breathe properly, it's not nice. And the people that worked there, they became as much part of the system in terms of enforcing things as the police or anyone else. I don't know, there was no reason why they couldn't just look the other way and say, but they were just as zealous as enforcing this nonsense as the police, right? And they really, some of them seem to take. I got banned from a gym in Mallorca, right? Because initially what they had in the gyms was that you could take off your mask or have it around your neck while you're working out, right? So if you're doing, say, doing a bench press while you are engaging in the exercise itself, you could not wear the mask or just have it around your neck or whatever, right? But if you're walking from place to place, you had to have the mask on. So if you're finished your bench press and then you want to go over there and you want to do, I don't know, pull-ups or something like that, while you're making that 30-second 3-second trip, you would have to put your mask back on. And this is how kind of insanely ridiculous it got, right? So I was on a treadmill, which was literally right beside where I was going to go next, which is go to do bench press, right? There was, I would say, a meter of a gap between the two of them. So I stopped my warm-up on the treadmill. I finished it. And I basically didn't put my mask back on. I just kept it as was and went over to the bench. And the guy that was, the dude who was working there saw this, and he comes storming over to me. He's just like, you need to put your mask on when you're going. And I was like, mate, it's like literally 2 seconds. He says, no, you have to wear it. And he came in, this same guy, I remember I was getting changed, and he comes in and he was walking around like, and I was getting changed. It was like, practically naked. And he comes, where's your mask? And I was like, you want me to have a mask on, but nothing else? Like, while walking into the like, this is just, are you embarrassed by this?
Some sort of kink,
like,
isn't
that was it, exactly. Like, I was about to go have a shower, and I was, pretty naked. I just had like a towel around my, hiding my modesty. About to go in and have a shower. This guy walks in, and he's just like, oh, you need to wear a mask. Wait, are you bloody mental? You want me to go, like, yeah, like you said, this is some bizarre kink, and he's standing there kind of going, put it on.
Yeah, I got...
just like, okay, there you go. Are you happy?
Yeah, I was asked to leave a local coffee shop because it was the whole scan the track and trace thingy.
Yeah.
And I just kind of waved my phone at it and walked off. And the guy went, oh, can I see your phone? I went, no, you can't see my phone. He's like, oh, I need to check that you've scanned it properly. I went, no, you don't need to check that. He went, if I can't see your phone, I'm not serving you. And we had a coffee shop full of people, and I'm a very mild-mannered person, and I don't get irate. I'm generally not bothered about stuff. But I just looked around, and I just said, you lot are all nuts. Like, you're giving over your private details to someone you don't know, then have your data passed on to whoever else. I was like, this is ridiculous. You shouldn't stand for it, and walked out. And that's like the most irate I've ever got in public, I think. But it got to that stage where I was like, it is just, someone in the shop demanding to see your phone. I was like, that's just bonkers, And we make comparisons with times in history, and I'm not going to do that. But yeah, you do think you can see how things snowball into like, oh, this is fine. They push it a bit further. Oh yeah, no, that's fine. Push it further. Whether if they've gone to step 4 straight away, everyone would go, no way. But it's the slow creep really, which is which I think is scary.
And not just that, but there was so many people in the media that were confident or that were emboldened to really disparage and belittle people. Anyone who didn't toe the line, anyone who didn't take the vaccine, anyone who was like questioning things, they were described in a way that was, you were kind of just vermin.
Oh,
just a
denier.
really nasty way, like, you were deniers, basically. You were all sorts of terms. I mean, you remember the sort of things that are being, the words, the descriptors that were being thrown around. It wasn't just as if, like, right, you could behave the way you wanted to, and that, okay, we'll leave you alone. They were described in very, very nasty terms. So yeah, the whole, you could see how that could have, if potentially if left to fester, could really get nasty, and it could develop into something more kind of sinister.
Yep. No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So in sort of a more positive light, obviously the nomadism is something that you're big on for sovereignty and everything.
Absolutely.
What advice would you have to someone who is thinking like, well, I was saying to you before this, for me, the UK is becoming less and less appealing. What advice would you have to someone who thinks, I'm done with it, either from a taxation point of view, a rules point of view, I just want more autonomy? What's your best advice, apart from maybe just get started, which might be the best advice?
I don't think there is any other advice than to just go do it. I mean, my situation, I was kind of accidental in how I got started. I started in Thailand in 2014, and I didn't have any grand ambitions to be a nomad at all, or to do any kind of crazy traveling. In fact, before that, I'd done very, very little. I'd been on kind of city breaks around Europe to all, places like Barcelona, Madrid, Berlin, blah, 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 Paris. and I had went to San Francisco after I finished college. So that was really it. And I didn't really have any ambitions to do anything else. I was kind of very, very happy staying in Dublin. Wasn't a major traveler. And I went to Thailand via accident. And the reason why I went there was because I discovered digital nomadism. People kind of, it was via the Tropical MBA podcast, which is still around. Right, it's a very good, I think it's an amazing podcast for anything to do with digital nomadism, just how to make money online, the ins and outs of travel and digital nomadism. So I stumbled across this particular podcast, right, and they were talking about, I remember there was one episode and they were talking about building businesses in all these kind of exotic locations. Like there was one dude who was doing drop shipping in Saigon. But what was appealing about it was that they were living for virtually nothing. So like this guy was living in Saigon for like $500, everything, right? So that's his rent, that's his food, eat out, entertainment, blah, blah, whatever. And Dublin is quite an expensive city. So I went to Chiang Mai in Thailand with just to bootstrap things, just to save money, just to live really cheaply. So something as to what my advice is, I think a lot would depend on where you're at, like what stage of your your journey business wise. I mean, are you at the bootstrapping stage? Are you just started out? If so, I think going to Thailand is a great idea. Going to somewhere like Medellin is another place in Colombia I went to. What's great about these kind of places, Bangkok is another great place as well, is that there is so many different entrepreneurs, so many fellow people who are doing the same thing there, right? There's a ready-made community in places like Chiang Mai. There are so many different people who are doing things like copywriters, there's drop shipping. You will find people who are of a similar mindset and who are doing the same thing business-wise as you a lot easier than you might in other places. So that would be a reason to do it, would be to bootstrap your business. And it's a very good place to do that. You'll be able to do it for very, very cheaply, and you'll get a lot of there's going to be a lot of people who are on the same path. You'll be able to network them and so on. Other than that, just do it. And that's kind of a cliche thing to say, but I can't think of any reason why you wouldn't just up sticks and go if you were able to do it.
Yeah.
Don't be scared of it. Just book the flight, see how it goes. Let's take Thailand, for example. Just say, right, I'm going to go to Chiang Mai or Bangkok for 3 months. Get an Airbnb. You can kind of get sublets very, very easily, or there's other ways if you want to get kind of apartments. There's Facebook groups to do it. And just go and see how you like it and take it from there. And I think it's just as simple as that. I don't think it's that much more complicated.
I think it's Tim Ferriss who talks about taking mini retirements, and he says try somewhere for 30 days. He's like, if you don't like it or you can't run your business like that, which you probably can, but if for whatever reason you can't do it, it's like you've just had 30 days. It's not the end of the world. So yeah, definitely.
Exactly, yeah.
Have you got any, or what's your favourite place you've been to, and then is there anywhere that has really sort of underperformed?
Let me think. My favourite place, I think, is actually the place I'm going probably going to go back to in a few weeks. It's Playa del Carmen. Playa del Carmen ticks a lot of boxes. It's not amazingly expensive. It's relatively cheap. It's very easy to get somewhere to live, which is a big thing, because that's not always the case. It's sometimes very difficult to rock into a city and get a 3-6 month apartment without spending an insane amount of money or just being able to get one at all. For example, you wouldn't be able to do that easily in London. You wouldn't be able to do it easily in many cities in the UK. You certainly couldn't do it in Dublin. And Barcelona, it's hard to do. It's possible. So Playa del Carmen is ready-made. You can show up. It's very easy to get somewhere to live. It's very easy to hit the ground running. So to the logistics side of it is great. Then you have the weather. You have the lifestyle. Weather is incredible for most of the year. There's a rainy season, but even then, rainy seasons will be our summer. Even then, it's still pretty damn good. Like, it's nice all year round. The weather, you have the sunshine, which I love. I hate bad weather. In addition to that, there's so much to do. There's a ton of different groups. There's, if you're into salsa, if you're into dancing, bachata, there's tons of groups there. There's all sorts of different personal development groups. There's meetups for philosophy. There's meetups for public speaking. There's tons of expats and nomads there. You will not be bored. It's an amazing social scene. I think, in fact, your problem is that you will be. It's hard to stay anonymous. Almost, it's hard to kind of not to stay home and not do anything. That's it's maybe a nice problem to have. So Playa del Carmen really for me ticks a lot of boxes, and hopefully I'm going to be having that as a base for European winters from here on in. And
nice.
Like I said, I'm going to go back there. Other places I really liked, I loved Medellin. There's problems with it. It can be a bit unsafe. It's sometimes infrastructure wise maybe it's not the best, but it's a lot of fun. It's just a very enjoyable place to go. There's been nowhere really I really disliked. Everywhere had something about it that maybe the only place I disliked was Bulgaria.
Okay.
So not necessarily Bulgaria, but I was in Bansko for 3 months, and I think the town itself was a bit too small for me. A bit too insular. It's very remote. If something goes wrong, you're basically a day away from anywhere. Like you're a day away from the nearest city, Sofia. So that would be the big thing for me. I spent a lot of time having to go in and out to Sofia to get stuff fixed, like get my phone fixed, laptop, stuff like that. So that would be really the place that I have no real desire to go back to. But having said that, I don't really hate it. I didn't really dislike it that much. I think the place I like the most, the country I like the most is Spain. Barcelona I've spent more than anywhere else, and Barcelona has everything really. It has the weather, it has an amazing social scene, it has incredible food, incredible restaurants. It has the beach is incredible. It's just there's so much to do. You can go skiing in the winter. Like Andorra is only a few hours away. You have the Costa Brava, Costa Blanca nearby. It's relatively it's very easy to get to any other city in Europe. Barcelona ticks it pretty much every box you can imagine. The downside, the big downside really is too much to do, too many distractions. So maybe that's a nice problem to have. But Barcelona is the place. I lived there for many years, and I will go back there, and that will be my main base at some stage very soon. So Spain really is the best of the best. I think Spain, the only reason to dislike Spain would be the bureaucracy. But if you have an outside source of income and you're not dealing with the bureaucracy on a daily basis, then Spain is perfect.
Nice and easy for Brits as well.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So that's the big problem with Spain. But other than that, if you can exist in Spain and not deal with the system at all, which is, it has a reputation for being awful, and it's deserved. If you can avoid that, then Spain is amazing.
Like it.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap up with the quickfire 5 in a minute. But first off, Keith, where's the best place for people to get in touch with you? 2 places. My Instagram is at Keith, KITH _ Commins, COMMINS, and then an underscore after that. My website is, best place to find me is bestsalesfunnels.net, which is, it's basically the world's first gallery of high converting sales funnels. So it's going to do other stuff apart from that, but that's probably the best place to find me and what I do and what my work is all about. I think that's it for so yeah, I did 2 places. Perfect. Cool. I should put those in the description of the video.
Yeah.
And then for the quickfire 5, first question is, if you could gift one business, marketing, copywriting, or mindset book to someone, what would it be and why?
Well, that's an easy one. And by pure coincidence, I happen to have it here with me. So this is it here. This is Grow Your Business Fast, the quick, dirty, and uncensored secrets to an extraordinarily small business success, despite recession, crap governments, and tight-arsed banks. So this is the Bible Um, the, I suppose, as far as I'm concerned anyway, this is the book I turn to just to get a really good primer on direct response marketing. Not just direct response marketing, but positioning. How to position yourself in a market, to kind of position yourself as the expert, as the authority, everything about how to build a funnel, how to write a sales page. But yeah, it's the mentality more than anything else as to how you should conduct yourself is the big takeaway from this book. And it's taught by the evil bald genius himself. And he's not saying anything kind of, I suppose, revolutionary. There's nothing new under the sun, but it's how he says it, the style he gets it across. His delivery is incredible, and I've sung John's praises many times, and this book for definite.
Amazing.
I don't know if you can still get it. You might have to dig around, but if you can get your hands on this, then absolutely.
Cool. Should definitely check it out. Question number 2. We're going for coffee, and I'm buying. What's your order?
Flat white.
Nice and easy. Question number 3 is you're in charge of the internet for a day and you can get rid of any social media platform. What one are you going to choose?
It's an easy one. It's TikTok.
It's by far and away the most popular answer.
TikTok has done so much damage to people.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's single-handedly behind people's attention spans being completely obliterated. Like, TikTok brain is real.
Yep, you won't find any argument on that from me. Question 4 is you're hosting a dinner party. You can have any 3 people, living or dead. Who do you want to invite?
The first one would be JFK. I've always been a big fan of his. JFK. Oh, man. Maybe Martin Luther King. So I liked a lot of... Those two are kind of important because... JFK, well, let's start with JFK because I would like to know what was going on with him at that particular time. Because he was doing some stuff potentially with the Federal Reserve and kind of stripping down the American government that may have got him killed. So I'd like to kind of get his insight on that. Martin Luther King was an interesting guy, somewhat flawed maybe, but I think he would have an interesting story to tell nevertheless. And the fourth would be, I think, Mick Jagger. I've always liked Mick. I like him because he's a rock and roller that I just like his style. I've always been a big fan of the Stones. Actually, I was named after Keith Richards by my dad. Yeah.
Nice.
So Mick Jagger I've always liked. I've always kind of thought he would be a rock star of some description, and I think Mick would probably be the best one because he's, he likely has a ton of cool stories to tell. So
yep, I can imagine that.
Yeah.
And final question, for someone who wants to do what you do, what would be your best bit of advice for them?
Learn direct response marketing. Start with all the old classics. Don't stay away from kind of shiny new objects. Any marketing influencers that are on the likes of TikTok and Instagram and those kind of people. So go after the old classics, the likes of Claude Hopkins, John Caples. Just find out their old books. Those books are far better than anything that's kind of around anything contemporary. What I like about all those guys, those old school copywriters, was they had to figure out stuff the hard way. Right? They had to do all this kind of mail order stuff, Robert Carler, etc. They had to figure out what worked by lots of painstaking research that often took a lot of time, right? So they figured out stuff that some whiz kid who's kind of doing kind of lots of who's building funnels using all the technology we have at our disposal today. Those guys should be listed before you should kind of drink those guys up before anything else. So learn copy and get a good foundation from copy from these guys, maybe Dan Kennedy and kind of more contemporaries like that. Just read all their stuff, write out sales letters by hand until your arm falls off. And I think that will give you a decent priming as to how to write. It won't make you a world-class copywriter, but it'll give you a priming as to what direct response copy is all about. Then you're going to have to have some sort of tech background, which you may or may not have. So that could be, you're talking about two different journeys, right? which might be too much for some people. So ideally, you're going to have to come from one and be good at one already. So someone coming into to become a sales funnel builder cold, I think is a big ask. So ideally, you're going to be good at one, and then you're going to learn the other, and then you'll really be full stack from a skills point of view. So yeah, if you're a copywriter and want to get into sales funnel building, then you're going to have to learn how to design, how to build a sales page so it converts, basic design theory. Just learn how to build a simple WordPress website, all that kind of stuff, all that kind of tech stuff, and vice versa if you're someone who is already a foot in the tech side. So that's basically it.
Perfect, like it. Thanks for your time today, Keith. That was love that conversation. Nice bit of controversy in the middle as well as the business building stuff. So yeah, that's what we like. So thanks for watching, guys. I will put all the links from today's episode in the description. As always, if you want to like the video, subscribe, share it around, that's always very much appreciated. Any questions for Keith or myself, pop them in the comments, and otherwise I shall catch you next time around.